On Friday afternoon, January 9th, 2009, a large, thick manila envelope arrived in my mailbox addressed to me in Atlanta. David brought it in, and he asked what it was, and after giving it a quick glance, I said, "Oh, it looks like it's from some church." I was busy, not paying too much attention to what was in it until later in the evening, and then I began to look at the papers, many papers, and photos and DVD in the envelope, and became a little interested, and I sat down and started reading some more. The cover letter said that if I was interested in pursuing further conversation, please be in touch with the PNC within the next 2 weeks. Now, I'd read several church information forms, and I was getting used to seeing that churches wanted to be more diverse. They wanted to reach out more into their communities. They wanted to experience transformation and be relevant in the real world. It seemed that diversity and engaging the community and transformation and relevance were really in vogue these days. So many church information forms were pretty much reading the same. But there was something different about this particular one, just something nuanced slightly differently, a few other things seeming to be happening in this church. Soon I was engrossed with the extensive materials that I had been sent, and I found myself checking out their website, going to MapQuest to see where this church really was located, trying to learn something more about this city in which I had never lived or even visited, visiting the Presbytery's website. And by a little time passed, I realized that several hours had come and gone, and I was finding myself terribly intrigued after these hours of looking at this material. Now, as I look back, I know that the spark of growing interest in me was the beginning of a sense of call to this church, a church remaining in the heart of the city against many odds, living out faith in unique ways, more multicultural and multiracial than the vast majority of Presbyterian churches, and with years of breaking down dividing walls long before diversity and multicultural church were in vogue. I was looking for a church that was living diversity, that was being community in a different way, that was seeking to live into justice. On Monday morning, I sent a letter to the PNC of the church in Detroit at Fort Street and 3rd, and our journey together began. As I said last week, if you thought you'd heard that verse before last week, you did. As I said last week, Paul is clear that living in community in the midst of difference and diversity is not only possible, it is absolutely essential if there is to be genuine community. As we heard again this morning, Paul's words of diversity and justice are about what it really means to follow the Jesus way, what it really means about who's in and who's out. It's a central core, the entire message of the living Christ, the heart of the gospel wrapped up into one verse. In Christ, there is no Jew or Greek, slave or citizen, male or female, making it clear that diversity should be the norm in communities of faith everywhere. The diversity Fort Street tries to live is vital to the Presbyterian Church if it is going to survive. There's much to be learned from this congregation. And others do want to know what you are doing. Since coming here, and you know that has not been very long, I've already been asked to lead a workshop on being a multicultural church. Now, a lot of people are leading these kinds of workshops, but I was asked because I actually am in a multicultural church, and people want to know how to do this. They want to know what you are doing. Many, though, while being very interested, don't always want to do the work that's required. For living in true diverse community is tough. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and energy. And it's easier to fall into the misconception of thinking that Christian unity means erasing diversity, erasing those social distinctions that shape us into the persons we are, that we have to emphasize our sameness in order to be community. But it isn't our diversity that gets in the way of being community. Difference and diversity are not the problem in our churches. Difference and diversity, as I said, are absolutely vital to community and to growth of communities and of the individuals in the community. We don't come into the church to lose who we are. We come into the church to be who we are. We don't come into the church to assimilate into some amorphous commonality. but we come into the church to be more fully who we were created to be. Most of us really know, that there really is a difference in race and ethnicity, in socioeconomic status, in gender and sexual identity. And being one in Christ is not about sameness, not really. In fact, being Christian is about living in that one community of the living Christ while being the absolutely unique people that we were created to be, each of us individually. Because only when each of us is our true selves, our own unique individual true selves, coming into the community, is the community really blessed and enriched. But we do know that too often these differences result in rights and privileges being accorded to some people while being denied to others, based solely on social status or identity groupings. Using these very real differences to allow some to be treated more fairly than others is indeed embedded into our very society, making its way into our communities of faith in ways that can destroy us. We can pretend that the injustices aren't there, but we know they really are present in the world, in our society, and in our churches. But what gets in the way of community, again, is not difference or diversity. It is rather dominance. And dominance of one over the other eliminates any possibility of true community. But Jesus comes abolishing this destructive dominance. According to Paul, no longer can one race be privileged at the expense of another. No longer can one ethnic group dominate another. No longer can one socioeconomic group be privileged at the expense of another. No longer can men dominate women and children. We are called to be different from society. We are called to be distinguishable in some discernible way. Because the community of the living Christ is about equally valuing all people no matter the status in life, about experiencing oneself as loved in community regardless of one's social location, about being accountable in community no matter who you are. Christian community empowers everyone, and genuine unity means sharing power. Those who typically have power must go through that very painful process of relinquishing power to those who are more on the margins. And sometimes, those who have not been part of the power network must face the equally difficult challenge of stepping up to speak truth to power, taking on the responsibility of empowering themselves. Following Jesus is about committing ourselves to life together so that power is shared, justice is ensured for all people, and the justice that abounds in our community is there for everyone, and we spread it into the world, bringing hope to all people.